Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is Christine Nicholas, Chair of the New York State Tourism Advisory Council, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is now 11:05. Due to the public health concerns and as authorized by executive order of the governor, this meeting will be conducted virtually and the public may listen live via webcast. It is important that all members and staff state their full name for the record each time they speak. And we'll start by taking attendance, and I'll call the names from the RSVP list that I have here. First, we will go with the TAC members. Dan Fuller.
Here.
Eleanor Tatum. Alexandra Stanton.
Here.
Catherine Nichols. Thurman Thomas.
Here.
Alana Petroselli.
Here.
Tom Mulroy.
Here.
Ali Sirota. Noted that she said she would be joining us a little late. And then we're joined by the ESD staff. I Love New York, Ross Levi.
Hello, good morning.
Kelly Garofalo Wilkins. We know Kelly's on. Rich Gagliano.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rich. And we have guests today, very special guests, Eric Gertler, Karen Mahoney, Tori Barnes, Josiah Brown, and then some TAC members who have not formally RSVP'd, but they may have joined us. Barbara Lee Diamondstein Spielvogel. Danny O'Donnell.
I'm here.
Very good, thank you. Jose Serrano.
I'm here on behalf of the center. My name's George. I'm Center's Chief of Staff.
Thank you, welcome. And I'll give a moment to anyone if I have not called your name, if you are here.
Christine, it's Eleanor. I don't know if you heard me say I was here.
We did not, so thank you, Eleanor. Welcome. Okay. So all members have been emailed a copy of the minutes, and they are also available on the ESD website. Are there any changes to the minutes? And do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Dan Fuller, I'll move the motion. I'll move the minutes.
Second.
Was that Alexandra Stanton who seconded?
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
My
All
apologies.
right, very good. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Members say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, minutes are approved. And at this time, I'm going to please ask that everyone go on mute if they haven't already. And before I begin my report, I'd like to recognize several individuals and introduce one in particular now, Eric Gertler, the Acting Commissioner and President and CEO designate of the Empire State Development. And Eric, I know when you'll be speaking about what you guys are up to, which is a lot, we know. We read the press releases and the news, but I would really, and I think on all of the TAC members would really be interested in hearing, in particular about the tourism efforts. This is something that, of course, this is our mission. We know that it's a very tricky time right now to be marketing and promoting tourism in the state when borders are now being closed, for the right reasons. But we do think that we need to be ready, shovel ready, if you will, but ready to go as soon as we get the green light with marketing, probably harder than we have ever before to market our wonderful state that we all love for tourism. So if you don't know Eric, he is the Acting Commissioner and President and CEO designate of Empire State Development. Eric was nominated to the post by Governor Cuomo in August of 2019 after serving as a member of the ESD board since June of 2018. And we know that you are very, very busy in a regular year, never mind COVID. So we're honored that you're joining us today. We look forward to hearing your thoughts about tourism and how we can work together on New York State's economic recovery. Eric?
Well, great. Well, thank you for that kind introduction, and first of all, thank you for all of you for the work that you're doing. I had hoped to meet all of you pre-COVID, and obviously that didn't happen. So I'm glad I get the opportunity to do so now. Granted, it's like so many other meetings we do today. It's either just a conversation or on Zoom, but. I can tell you from my own personal experience, in August 2019 seems like a lifetime ago. Things have changed so much, certainly for the tourism industry, and I'll talk about that. But I appreciate all of your efforts here. It is certainly much more difficult, and so appreciate your all of your involvement. Christine, Nicholas, thank you for chairing, and I'd be remiss to not sort of point out a few friends that I have on the board. And I want to say hello to Alexander Staton. I've not been able to see you. I hope to see you as soon as we have better times.
Indeed. Hey
So
there.
it's at least nice to hear your voice. And
Right back at you.
And Eleanor Tatum, we met many years ago with your father when I was in the newspaper business, and I hope everything is going well. And to everybody else, thank you. Thank you again so much. So, as you pointed out, I can assure you that our agency and the entire leadership, we recognize how important tourism is to the state economy, and all of our collective efforts, and the mission of ESD to ensure that we have a strong and vibrant economy means that we also need to have a successful tourism industry in New York State. The governor has made this commitment many times to ensure that we have the resources he's made in terms of his time, resources, attention. And, unfortunately, pre-COVID, when we compare it, we had seen such explosive growth in New York State in the tourism industry since 2011. In fact, over 30% increase in visitation and nearly $31 billion increase in economic impact. And most importantly, 25% increase in tourism-related jobs. And as amazing as that track record is, we know, and we talk about it. I recognize how hard New York State's tourism industry has been hit by COVID. Arguably one of the hardest. And that impacts jobs, visitor spending, and of course, tax revenue. In other ways, the industry has shown amazing tenacity and innovation in the face of these unprecedented challenges. We've seen many attractions and destinations across the state utilize virtual reality applications, for example, and other digital media to allow visitors to experience attractions from home, and also in person adapt some of the offerings for safety and social distancing. We know that virtual reality is not the same as enjoying many of the attractions and destinations, but it is part of the New York way of being tenacious and innovative in making sure that those destinations remain, top of mind. As I'm sure you've heard at prior meetings, our tourism and marketing teams have been actively promoting those virtual offerings and creating some I Love New York at Home experiences of our own. We've been promoting opportunities for safe outdoor recreation and staycations as health and safety conditions have allowed. So these collective efforts have helped keep otherwise closed attractions, as I said, top of mind, and even allowed wider destinations to reach, or many of the destinations to reach a wider audience than has been familiar with before. And we hope that those efforts pay off, in the future. It certainly has provided parents with enriching opportunities to virtually visit sites and attractions, even when children have not been able to explore or learn these sites in person. No doubt we have a tough road ahead of us, but there's also, I think, reasons to be hopeful. down, while the numbers have been down overall, there was leisure travel activity this summer and fall, particularly to more rural and outdoor recreation-based destinations. And in some cases, we've welcomed a noticeable number of new first-time visitors. Camping, for example, saw a big uptick with a lot of consumers trying this activity for the first time. And some areas seeing a positive halo effect on local retailing and dining in certain destinations and places that people rarely go to in normal times have become popular, places around the state. State-owned ski areas are reaching their COVID level capacity on weekends, even with marginal weather. And some have experienced record sales in season pass holders. So, all of this lets us be optimistic. But we also know that there's a lot of pent-up demand, and when travel does come back, New York State remains a top destination in the minds of travelers. When we've done our studies, the number of people who will say that they will definitely or probably consider New York for vacation is slightly up from last year, now 85%. And that's the highest of any destination in the Northeast. So just very quickly, as we move forward, please know, and I'm sure that you do, that we recognize how important tourism will be for the economic recovery of New York State. We are absolutely committed to supporting the tourism industry once conditions with COVID make it safe and effective to do so, just as we've done before COVID. Tourism has been well represented in both the governor's state of the state and the executive budgets that were announced over the last 2 weeks. And I think that shows that it's not just a commitment by ESD, but it's a commitment right to the top and a reflection of the governor's commitment to tourism as an economic driver. We are focused on working with our regional tourism partners and industry groups and other stakeholders, including all of you, to ensure that we identify the optimal efforts, timing, and focus to rebuild our tourism industry. And certainly with a goal towards the levels that we consistently enjoyed pre-COVID under the governor. Your role in helping to spread the word about New York State as a great destination is important. We appreciate it. And we certainly encourage you to, both now and going forward, to draw on your expertise and provide input and share ideas and best practices from other destinations and from other tourism professionals, so we can continue to focus on ensuring that the tourism industry returns once we have vaccines in place, once we're post COVID, and notwithstanding, as I said, that it's a tough road ahead. We do remain optimistic that the attractions and destinations that we have in New York State will continue to be attractive to tourists in the region, in the country, and worldwide. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I can't stay on the call, but I certainly hope that I will get a chance to meet you all in person. I hope everybody stays safe, and I wish you all the best for a new year. So again, thank you for letting me participate today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate your time and your interest and commitment to tourism. You have an open door here at TAC. I will share with you, because this was long before your time, but when 9/11 happened, ESD really did an amazing job of helping to promote tourism, not only to New York City, but to the entire state. And they invested an additional $40 million into tourism. It may be too early to talk about what kind of funding and budget would be, enhanced for tourism promotion, but we stand ready to work with you on helping that take place, because as I said earlier, we will need to market New York, I think, more than we ever have before. And we have the tools, and luckily with the governor's interest and investment that he has shown over the years that he's been in office to tourism, I am confident that we can exceed expectations and market New York State the way it deserves to be marketed so that we can rebuild tourism quicker than some of the pundits are saying it will take. But we need your help, Eric, and we appreciate your interest. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, great. Thank you. We always want to outperform what the pundits say, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good meeting. Thank you for including me. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So for my report, I'd like to review two significant tourism-related announcements from the governor: the completion of both the Empire State Trail and Moynihan Train Hall. We've been updating you on progress for both developments, and we're excited to see their completion, as both will have significant positive impacts on the tourism industry. The Empire State Trail, now the nation's longest multi-use state rail, spans 750 miles total, 75% of which is off-road trails ideal for cyclists, hikers, runners, cross-country skiers, and snowshoers. The trail is expected to draw nearly 9 million residents and tourists annually. Additionally, in these difficult times, the trail gives New Yorkers from every corner of the state a safe outlet for recreation as we continue to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. The new Empire State Trail website provides quick and easy access to trail information, including segment descriptions, access points, trail distances, parking areas, restrooms, and nearby amenities and attractions. The website's responsive and user-friendly design allows users to access interactive maps from mobile devices, zoom in to specific locations of interest, and download print maps of trail segments. Cyclists can print cue sheets with highly detailed directions for following a selected trail segment. We know that the launch of the trail is just the beginning for this exciting asset, and the Division of Tourism looks forward to promoting it as a new world-class attraction. I hope I didn't go too fast there, Kelly and Ross. But you can see it on the website, and when you have time, just tool around on the new website that they've put together for the trail. It's very exciting.
Hey, Christine.
Yes.
Tom Mulroy. You should make note also that backroads.com, which is the largest outdoor adventure and cycling tourism company in the world, of about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, have now 2 tours, biking tours in the Hudson Valley, which I think is huge. To having listed on their World Wide Web, and they feature 2 tours in the Hudson Valley on these bike systems. Somehow we should promote that, and they should promote us or whatever. But that's a huge boost for state tourism to have that company promoting New York State like that with 2
That's
tours.
great, Tom. I didn't know that. I will look it up. Backroads.com.
Backroads.com. Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks so much for sharing.
Sure.
So I also wanted to just bring to everyone's attention, although they probably read about it in the news, the $1.6 billion Moynihan Train Hall project, New York's most ambitious transportation infrastructure upgrade in decades, was completed on time and on budget despite the many setbacks 2020 presented. The new train hall, which services Long Island Railroad and Amtrak, features 9 platforms and 17 tracks accessible from the main train hall, with a direct connection to the 8th Avenue subway. And for the first time, direct access to the train station from 9th Avenue. It is a true transit hub, and it is truly a beautiful building, and we have some photos to show you. We encourage you to enjoy it now when everything is easy to be socially distant, because when this gets up and running after COVID, obviously you will not have the pleasure, if you will, of seeing it the way you'll see it now, but it'll still always be a pleasure because it is absolutely beautiful. I want to congratulate all of those who worked on both of these projects. And before I introduce Nice Tea, I do want to just give a shout out to Thurman Thomas. Thurman, our hearts are with the Bills, with you. We know that by having them progress as much as they did was not only great for Buffalo, but great for New York, gave us New Yorkers something to root for. It was also great to see 7,000 fans safely being able to return to the stadium safely with very little result in COVID spread. So I think it was only 1.4%, which the governor was pleased with. So Thurman, before I introduce Nistia, do you have anything to add about the bills?
Thank you, Christine. That was great. Yeah, it's waking up this morning and kind of getting over what happened yesterday. You know, this team is finally back to where we think they should be. And trust me, during all this pandemic, the guys at that organization and Coach McDermott and the Pagulas have really done an outstanding job of bringing this team back together. And we appreciate everything that they've done and appreciate everything the governor has done for the last couple of games, home games, to allow the fans in the stadium. I was at the last game against Baltimore, and it was electric and was fantastic. So hopefully we can make a better team next year and have an opportunity like we did this year to go to the Super Bowl. So thank you.
So since you were there, I have a question for you because, watching it on TV, you could hear the fans shouting, but was that piped in or was that the actual 7,000 fans making all that noise?
I think it was actually the 7,000 fans making noise because, we do have like metal seats like in the stadium. They were bamming on those pretty hard. And let me tell you something, people were screaming like one person almost equaled like 5 people. People were actually screaming. And I was one of those guys that was screaming too and woke up the next day and could barely talk. So.
Well, it was impressive. And we're just sorry for last night's loss, but looking forward to next season.
Absolutely. So, thank you.
Thank you. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce, and well, I don't need to introduce Josiah Brown because he has been at many TAC meetings, but I'd like to welcome Josiah now as chair, the new chair of the NYSTIA board, to provide the council with a brief overview of his vision for NYSTIA in 2021. Josiah?
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Christine. I want to give a warm thank you to all that you do and to all that TAC does on behalf of the NYSTIA board. I just want to take a few minutes here and give a little bit of NYSTIA's story and what has led us to what we are really rolling out in 2021. NYSTIA, the New York State Tourism Industry Association, we're almost 7 years old, but really our history goes much further back because there was other organizations doing this work, and we began to braid them together and really to form a TIA, a Tourism Industry Association. And at the very beginning, we really had 2 things that we were kind of talking about, one of which was a TIA is not necessarily like unique to New York. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. This is a very common thing to have a center post, an umbrella in a state to touch all the different areas of tourism and as an industry. But we also talked about, here as we're forming this, we want to have an organization that really stands up to the pride of what New York is. This is New York. And so we said, this needs to be our mission, that we build a TIA that is an example nationally and internationally, that we build something that people can look to as a standard. And we knew humbly that we had a lot of work to do to be able to fill that space, but why would you want any other goal than to be an example and to fulfill that for such an amazing state, because we have such unbelievable attractions and such unbelievable people and people promoting it. And so for this last 7 years, we have really been able to build under good times or under an umbrella, which, building under this umbrella of Governor Cuomo's tremendous support for this industry has been amazing. Not only in his belief of it as an industry and his encouragement of the industry, but the funding that he has brought back to help us get back to a national and international stage as an industry. And so we really had that time to build, and we really envisioned ourselves being that umbrella for our members and to be able to really facilitate their success. If you, Kelly, give me the next slide. Our mission, when we came out of our last strategic planning session, we said that our mission was to leverage the collective strength of the New York tourism industry by providing collaboration and networking and education and advocacy and recognition to facilitate the success of our members. And really that's really the what and some of the how, and it kind of alludes to the why there at the very end, the success of our members. But what does that really mean? What is our true why? And our true why is that really tourism is always a means to an end, that the resident of New York State is the beneficiary of everything that we do. It is the local resident. So tourism provides the means to that end, to build quality of life and to build small business success and pride of place for the residents and to give meaningful work. And of course, the local, the county, the regional, and the state economics that come out of this industry are massive. And so that's what we wanted to do, is that we always want to be the industry that is focusing on our mission, which is the resident first in what we're doing and how important the tourism industry is for that. I think I have a slide here for our board of directors. We have really the who's who of the industry serving on our board. And then we also have a slide for the executive committee that is, I am just privileged to be serving with right now. I think the benefit of being on the executive committee is you get a thumbnail on the slide, so you get to see our face. And we also have a wonderful staff. Our CEO, Bob Provost, and Christine Hoffer are doing incredible work. So really 2020 was the year that kind of we theorized about in our advocacy, because we are not lobbying, we are advocacy. So we provide a tremendous amount of advocacy. And of course, in advocacy meetings, you would have this moment where you would say, well, you wouldn't want the tourism industry to go away. That was almost something we theorized about. And so we really were built for such a time as this, that our industry is hit right between the eyes in the beginning of 2020, hit first, hit hardest, and has such a dramatic impact. And so we got to work. The committees, the board, we got to work in doing our work of convening and connecting and advocating to building people up. We had over 30 calls that we hosted across the industry, where we brought in, the best of the best. We had Roger Dow speak, we had Tori Barnes speak, Tourism Economics, Brand USA. We also highlighted our best of the best, because our destinations and our businesses were stepping up and being incredibly innovative and just leading. And we were so proud to see that. And we hosted webinars to give people cutting edge information. We were heavily involved in the advocacy of the bills that were moving, especially our organization was very key in helping the 501c6 organizations be able to access the PPP. And we headed into the fall. We held our first virtual annual meeting. We held our first virtual conference. And our first virtual conference, we were so proud to be able to host most of the tourism connected commissioners across the state, as well as Isle of New York. But there was one session where we hosted a session with the TIAs, from several TIAs from across the country, the tourism industry associations. And what they kept saying was, we wish we were New York. We wish we were New York. And of course, what they were speaking of is, again, Governor Cuomo's leadership in this pandemic and what it had resulted in as a state and how it had been a national example. But it was the first time that we in the tourism industry got to begin to enjoy that view of the nation looking at us and saying, we see you, and we see you as an example, and we see you leading. And it wasn't our credit to take, but we got to enjoy that moment and let that fuel our mission to be that. So in 2020, we saw another place that we were perfectly positioned to be, which was to build this campaign that we've been talking about called New Yorkers for New York, where we would be able to leverage that collaboration and the networking and the advocacy to begin to reach out across the whole industry and to all of the businesses and build an initiative called New Yorkers for New York, encouraging New York residents from every corner to kind of travel to the other corners of New York and to invest their tourism dollars when the moment was right, when the destinations were ready to, meet them across 2021, to invest their money and go back to maybe their college town or go visit family or see some of the world-class attractions and open spaces that are in New York State, and encourage them to do it not only for their own enjoyment of travel, but to do it for the economic success of our state, to reinvest into our state and our communities, because that's going to do what? It's going to improve the lives of our residents as they begin to travel across, meet their New York neighbors, and be able to invest their money back into these communities that need that investment. And so we were planning on this week unveiling some strategies. We've had a very dedicated committee on this to unveil some strategies under this New Yorkers for New York campaign. But we had to make that decision. We had to make that decision a couple of weeks back. And so we didn't know exactly what the temperature of the world was going to be this week. And so we've just paused a little bit. We didn't want to be tone deaf. We wanted to be able to launch this campaign when it absolutely made sense to get the PR for it and things. So very soon, when the timing is right, and it is getting right, we will be unveiling different strategies in the this idea of New Yorkers for New York, which will be grassroots, it will be local, on up, and it will be PR to encourage people to travel and also to help unify us and speak the positivity of what our industry brings. So that is where we've come from. That is where we're going. NISDIA very much is working for the success of our members by attempting to be that center post of the industry here, to be an umbrella and to be an example in following essentially the example that we have right from the top of New York. And so we thank you for your leadership, Christine, and just having a moment to speak to TAC. And we'd be happy to field any questions afterwards and would love to have you involved as we begin to unveil these things. We'll let you know.
Thank you so much, Josiah. We wish you the best. We had a great working relationship with Natasha Caputo, and thank her for her service, and look forward to working closely with you, and best of luck. I don't think it needs luck, but looking forward to New Yorkers for New York and expanding our horizons. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ross. So Ross can give us the I Love New York report. Ross, you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Very good. Yes, can hear you beautifully.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine. Want to wish the TAC a Happy New Year, of course, although admittedly there is less joy in New York State and Buffalo today, as the mighty Bills may have fallen a little short, but a great season. We all should be very proud of where they've come, and we'll get them next year, right, Thurman? I know you agree. I also want to thank Commissioner Gertler for joining the meeting today. I think he laid out some important perspective and direction. First, he was correct in reminding us that what we've accomplished in tourism up until the outbreak of COVID is quite a lot. Since our last meeting, we received the 2019 tourism numbers, and we're all aware of the pandemic's impact on the industry for 2020, but I still think it's worth taking a moment to recognize the immense growth that tourism was experiencing prior to COVID, thanks to the collective efforts of state government and the state's tourism industry. It's definitely a group effort, and I don't think we should let the moment go without recognizing that achievement. We had a total of 264 million visitors in 2019, and that's a 4.5% increase from the year before. Total economic impact in 2019 topped $117 billion with a B. And that's another record, 2.8 billion year-over-year increase. So again, the highest economic impact that tourism has ever had in the history of New York State. Tourism supported more than 959,000 jobs and stayed as the state's third largest private employer. And we've seen concurrent growth in the total number of, in the lodging sector, of available rooms and occupancy rate and average price paid per room. So that's actually quite a feat. That means we were able to increase supply and demand and profitability all at the same time. So that's really something. But of course, as we look at that tremendous track record, we can't ignore that the tourism industry is now facing, it's become cliched to say, but true, unprecedented challenges. As Eric mentioned, tourism was one of the industries hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And while we won't have our full 2020 figures for a number of months yet, some projections are indicating a near 50% drop in visitation from the year prior to COVID. And we know from the states, from the New York State Department of Labor, the leisure and hospitality industry lost approximately 586,000 jobs in the first few months of the pandemic. And while we recovered slightly more than half of those jobs, around 300,000, we're still facing an industry that was disproportionately affected. The DOL data through mid-November indicates nearly 200,000 industry workers were still active beneficiaries of unemployment programs. So that's still a lot of people from the industry out of work. Additionally, over the last 9 months, of the top 10 companies required to report layoffs, over half of them were tourism-related companies. So it's been obviously an incredibly tough time for our industry. But as Eric was alluding to, there is reason to be hopeful. From a national consumer standpoint, consumer sentiment towards travel is optimistic and positive. We've been tracking a national sample to understand current and future travel intent. And that's showing that among frequent travelers, the vast majority plan to resume travel in the post-COVID era. Specifically, 92% say they've missed travel very much or somewhat. 82% are hoping to take a leisure trip in the next 6 months, indicating, I think, what we've all sensed is a real pent-up demand and enthusiasm for traveling again. And among this group of hopeful travelers, 42% have already made some sort of commitment to travel, meaning they've already booked a hotel or a flight or a rental car or vacation package. So that's good news overall. And there's additional good news for New York State in particular, that potential travelers still view New York as a very desirable destination. 85%, in fact, our tracking study shows, are definitely or probably considering New York for a vacation. And as Eric noted, that's the most of any state in the Northeast, and is in fact is a tick higher than prior years. So even over COVID, the desirability of New York as a destination, the intent to travel here has grown a little bit. And we've seen some encouraging trends that are likely to position New York State well as the nation emerges from COVID. That includes the desire for outdoor recreation and natural beauty, including that camping as a good example of that Eric was alluding to. The ability of virtual and digital content to create interest at a low cost is a trend I think we'll be able to maximize. And an excitement by locals to rediscover attractions within their own communities, and just travelers in general seeking destinations closer, that they're able to drive through. So in short, there's a lot of pent-up demand that New York State should be well suited to take advantage of once consumers get a sense that travel is safe and there are no quarantine impediments to their trip. So how do we position ourselves for those opportunities to come? Well, first we should recognize that promotion of New York State as a destination for future travel never really stopped. Ever since even since our last tech meeting, I Love New York has engaged in a number of promotional activities. We created and promoted a holiday gift guide that not only created some economic activity for New York State attractions by basically sort of selling things from their gift shops and other merchants across the state. It also worked to remind consumers of their favorite destinations and get them excited about their next New York trip, whether that was with a gift card for fly fishing gear from the Esopus Creek in the Catskills, or a stay-at-home survival kit of local goodies from the Fly Creek Cider Mill and Orchard in central New York. For the new year, we published a New York State Guide to New Year's Resolutions for 2021, also to help keep New York top of mind for those planning for 2021. The guide featured both personal and virtual activities, including like getting healthier by exploring the Empire State Trail, improving your cooking skills with a class at the New York Kitchen or Millette Culinary Studio, or trying something new by making your own glass at the Corning Museum of Glass, or a Finger Lakes virtual pairing experience with local wines and cheese, among many others. If you visit the I Love New York website, you'll notice we've officially transitioned to the winter season with information on safe nearby activities to enjoy New York, recognizing the pandemic has driven more people to recreate outdoors. We launched a responsible outdoor recreation competition where we asked our social media followers to post a picture or video with a hashtag on Instagram showing how they recreate locally. We've also had some great PR success, as is common this time of year. Several publications have come out with their best places to visit in 2021, and we secured several mentions, including in Harper's Bazaar, Condé Nast Traveler, Travel and Leisure, and Vogue. we also helped secure coverage on new hotel openings in 2020. In total, there were about 20 or 30 different stories about hotels opening in New York. And we connected journalists and writers from outlets like Forbes and Essence with New York State lodging and attractions, from camping in the Finger Lakes and Greater Niagara and Central New York to boutique luxury hotels on Long Island. Finally, in December, Markley Wilson, our international team, hosted a UK and Ireland virtual sales mission. We often travel overseas to do those, but obviously in the day of COVID, that's all happening virtually. It was a 2-day effort. The first day matched 8 tour wholesalers with local partners, including Oneida County, Dutchess County, the Thousand Islands, Westchester, Long Island, Winewater Wonders, Buffalo Niagara, and Niagara, USA. And the second day of the sales mission featured a training session for 114 travel agents from England and Scotland and Ireland on selling New York State when it's safe to do so. This has largely been the way we've been doing our international travel over the last few months, using our time to educate as many international travel agents as possible on everything New York State has to offer. And we're actually aiming to designate 600 travel agents as New York State specialists by the end of 2021. Looking forward, we recognize that continuing the state strategy of marketing New York and expanding the offerings which make New York a more attractive destination will continue to serve us well. You hopefully heard about some of the initiatives outlined in the governor's State of the State proposals when those came out earlier this month. And there was a number of those that affected tourism specifically. The governor mentioned that as we tame COVID-19, there will be a Rediscover New York marketing initiative to capitalize on pent-up demand and invite people from across the globe to safely rediscover New York with all of our cultural and culinary and other attractions that we have to offer. The governor recognizes the struggling state of the arts community, and in response to that, proposed a New York Arts Revival, a public-private partnership that will organize pop-up performances and arts events across the state, starting as early as February. More than 150 world-class artists are participating in that, along with arts organizations such as Ballet Hispanica, Arts Nova, the Albany Symphony, the National Black Theater, Pendragon Theater in Saranac Lake, and many others supported by New York State Council for the Arts, which works with over 2,000 arts organizations across the state. So as part of that, there are going to be performances and exhibitions held at outdoor sites, both in New York City and across the state, including state-owned properties like state parks. The series will culminate with 2 landmark events, the opening of Little Island at Pier 55 and the 20th anniversary of the Tribeca Film Festival in June. Also, to support the arts community, the governor announced the Creatives Rebuild initiative, where the state will partner with the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation to support New York State artists. Developed in partnership with the Reimagine New York Commission, this initiative will put back to work 1,000 artists who have been impacted by the crisis and will invest in dozens of small arts organizations that make our towns and cities so dynamic. As part of building a new New York initiative, the governor laid out several proposals that would build out New York State parks. There are a whole lot of efforts to increase the opportunity to enjoy our parks even as COVID is going on, recognizing that there has been more than 570,000 overnight stays already booked in state parks for 2021, which is a 23% increase in reservations from last year. So there's a whole lot of initiatives to help support park programming for this year. Also a New York Parks 100 initiative, which will see historic investments into expanding the state park system by committing at least $440 million over the next 4 years to culminate in the 2024 celebration of the 100th anniversary of the State Park Act. And so it really is a great opportunity to expand our parks even further from what's been done, including a new visitor center at Niagara Falls, new facilities at the Marsha P. Johnson State Park in New York City, creating an Empire State Birding Network, and increasing overnight camping options. So all kinds of great things with the parks. Also recognizing the enormous demand for residents and visitors from New York City, 2021 New York will prioritize the addition of amenities to state parks throughout the Hudson Valley, which will be very important. And the governor also announced a Our Whole History initiative to ensure that historic sites are telling the untold stories that reflect the true diversity of our history. So for example, in 2021, New York will designate the first New York State historic site dedicated to Black history by reprogramming Phillips Manor Hall State Historic Site in Yonkers to become a museum and cultural site. In addition, the Office of Historic Preservation will expand its capacity to inform programming and exhibits that tell the untold stories of Indian nations and indigenous cultures residing in New York State. This year, the governor's also opening a autism nature trail at Letchworth State Park. And as we continue our work to expand our Accessible New York program here at I Love New York, this will certainly be a new trail that we're able to include and promote. And lastly, there were several historic infrastructure projects that are going to greatly benefit tourism. You heard Christine talk about the Moynihan Station. That's actually even bigger than that, the $51 billion Midtown West development, which will complete the build out and connectivity of Midtown West from Penn Station to the Hudson Valley. That includes developing the Empire State Complex, the expansion of the Jacob Javits Center, the High Line being expanded to provide safer and faster pedestrian connectivity to Moynihan Train Hall, and the expanded Penn Station to Hudson Yards, the Javits Center, and the Hudson Park, replacing Port Authority with an outdated, to replace that outdated terminal with a new state-of-the-art facility to accommodate growing commuter volume and additional intercity bus operations. And of course, the governor's infrastructure proposals will accelerate the infrastructure projects already happening at LaGuardia and JFK, the Route 2 of the Upstate Airport revitalization, the MTA Capital Plan, and the Long Island Railroad third track. As Eric alluded to, the governor announced his proposed executive budget just last week. This, of course, still has to be passed by the legislature and is heavily dependent on federal aid, which we'll be hearing about in a moment from U.S. Travel Association. But we did want to mention that tourism was well represented in that budget. At $56 million, the proposal is nearly level with the overall tourism appropriations during the pre-COVID years. And so we'll be letting you know about details as that hopefully comes to pass as it moves through the legislature. So in closing, I just want to say there's much in the works, not just to build back the tourism industry, but build it back smarter and stronger than before. We have obviously a highly innovative tourism industry here in New York State. We have incredible natural assets. We have the world's most compelling attractions and support from our governor. There's no doubt it's going to be another challenging year, and we're not out of the tunnel yet. But the light at the end of that tunnel is burning brightly, and the daylight of recovery from our tourism industry lies ahead. I'm most certain. So that concludes my report, Christine.
Thank you, Ross. Any questions for Ross? I guess it's a sign that it was very comprehensive. So thank you. Thank you so much, Ross. We are now very fortunate to have Tori Emerson Barnes, who serves as the Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy at the U.S. Travel Association. She leads the USTA's Government Relations, Policy Development, Communications, Marketing, and Research teams. And we're looking forward to hearing more about the latest developments with the federal government in providing support and relief to the tourism industry. So welcome, Tori. And thank you so much to you and the USTA for all your efforts in keeping tourism strong.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for having me today. It's great to speak with you all, along with Eric and Josiah and Ross. You know, a lot of the collective work that y'all are doing and what we are doing at the federal level is really so critical, as we've heard today. And so, you know, really grateful. Without your voices and the collective voices, we would not be where we are. And last year obviously was tough, but advocacy and our grassroots efforts really did end up resulting in big wins for our industry. And so I'm going to spend the majority of my time today talking a bit about the COVID-19 relief bill in 2020 and what's in it for the industry, and then touch a little bit about the future of what we're seeing and how we'll be advocating at the federal level moving forward. From a recent relief bill perspective, the one that was passed late last year, really grateful for Senator Schumer's leadership to get that done, and a lot of other members on the federal team, the federally elected members of Congress there in New York, which are really critical to having to really drive the discussion. I think people like Congressman Reed and Congresswoman Rice were critical to getting a resolution on an agreement for our industry. And the industry obviously played a really key role in that, in activating these members of Congress to work on our behalf. And so, want to just remind you as we walk through this that there is new guidance that's coming out very often. So encourage you all to check out up on our website. But first I'll touch on the Coronavirus Relief Fund. There isn't additional funding or flexibility in that program, but that's one that some destination marketing organizations were able to tap into. And there was other relief for state and local that was important in that fund. So that deadline to spend appropriated funds was extended to December 31st, 2021. And if a business or a DMO has received CRF funding, they are still eligible to apply for the coveted PPP loans. So that is an important nuance as well. Regarding transportation, for airports, the bill included $1.75 billion in grants for commercial service airports, and $200 million for airport concessionaire relief, as well as $15 billion for the airlines to cover worker payrolls and benefits. That was really important, in particular for the airports and the concessionaires. So pleased to see that in there. I think next go round, the airports are needing additional funds, maybe as much as 17 billion. So we'll be back at it there for those groups. And on transportation for buses, there was $2.5 billion for passenger transportation services, 10 billion for highways. There was also 14 billion in transit infrastructure grants for prevention and preparedness in response to COVID, and $1 billion for Amtrak. Beyond transportation, from some of the other important provisions that were part of the CARES Act that had passed early last year, but then needed to have some additional modifications, we saw that the troubled debt restructuring continues with the suspension of certain accounting and reporting requirements through January of 2022. Which will make it easier for financial institutions to modify the terms of commercial loans to accommodate a borrower's economic hardship. And then it also, in part to pay for the overall package, rescinds $429 billion from the CARES Act in the Main Street Lending Program, which businesses were really finding difficult to tap into. The strings tied to this program were very significant. So we think that the money is better spent on some of these other programs. Next, I'll touch on a couple miscellaneous tax provisions that we've been advocating for, and think especially once we get back up and running more robust fashion, they will be really impactful. The business meal deduction was included, which allows for businesses to fully deduct food and beverage expenses incurred during the normal course of business. And also extended the employee payroll tax deferral, which extends the time that employers have to pay back their employee portion of payroll taxes to the end of 2021. Another important provision, this was particularly important for some of our corporate partners, the employee retention tax credit, which is in fact a refundable tax credit, was modified and enhanced. And That credit can be claimed against the quarterly paid employer portion of Social Security taxes. The time for employers to pay back the employee portion is extended to the end of 2021. It also lowers the required revenue decline to be eligible for the credit, and the credit itself is extended through July 1st of 2021. Also, it increases the threshold for employers to be considered small employers. And importantly, it allows the PPP recipients, so folks that are able to tap into the PPP, to also claim the ERTC as long as they don't claim the credit for the any compensation that was covered by a forgiven PPP loan. So that's important now. Previously, you could not tap into both the ERTC and the PPP. There's also a new program that was passed in the COVID relief package in December, and this might be in particular interest to New York, the Live Venue Grant Program, which would allow the eligible entities include live entertainment venues, performing arts centers, theatrical producers, nonprofit museums, movie theaters, and talent representatives. And this grant is based on 45% of an employer's gross revenue in 2019, up to $10 million. And if an entity receives a live venue grant, just should be noted that they're no longer eligible for PPP. We're still waiting on the regulations to come out on this, but think that this will be particularly helpful again for New York in particular. Next, I'll touch on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, or EIDL. This is available to any entity experiencing a decline in revenue due to the pandemic. For this loan program, you apply directly to the Small Business Administration, and it ensures that EIDL advances are not treated as gross income for tax purposes. It guarantees a full $10,000 advance for certain entities. It also directs SBA to approve or deny within 21 days of receiving an application. And SBA is also directed to provide applicants with an explanation if they deny an EIDL advance. Now I'll touch on the PPP, which is definitely one of the hottest programs in the relief set for businesses under 500 employees, or in some cases it'll be 300 in the new version. This is one of our top priorities for 2020, which we wanted to extend and enhance because, and really, I think because of our tireless advocacy efforts and the work that so many of y'all in New York did, DMOs and other nonprofits now have access to PPP loans. There are also is the ability to have a second draw loan. So if there is an organization that needed a second loan. So the new eligible businesses are here on the slide: businesses, tribal businesses, quasi-governmental, and DMOs, 501c6, 501c3, 501c19, and self-employed independent contractors. And importantly to note that even if you were not originally eligible for the first draw, now you are eligible for both the first draw and the second draw. So technically, DMOs could still apply for a first loan, and as long as you spend all of that money, you could then apply for a second loan. So so that's a good update. And the loan process is on our site. There's also links to useful government sites as well at ustravel.org. I'll talk about a couple of the loan features here for the PPP. At least 60% of loan forgiveness has to be used on payroll in order to get the loan forgiveness. Next slide, please. And any amount used on non-payroll expenses in excess of 40% is now eligible for loan forgiveness. And any expense paid with PPP funds can be deducted if it is typically a deductible expense. And importantly, all loan and guarantee fees are waived. Next slide, please. So the covered period here, any period that the borrower chooses that's between 8 weeks and 24 weeks after the loan is issued. And again, for loan forgiveness, you must submit an application to your lender with the necessary documentation Loan forgiveness applications must be accepted or denied within 60 days. And if you make a good faith effort to rehire employees but are unable to do so for any reason, such as ongoing health and safety restrictions, you will not be penalized. Again, ustravel.org/relief resources. You can find other useful links there, an FAQ, our PPP document, and we are really updating that regularly. So those are the main components included in the relief program for travel businesses. And I think it's important to note that we're also looking forward here on what to be looking at for over the next 100 days. So obviously with this new administration, we were working with the transition team and now are working with the new Biden team over the last several weeks, and this last week has been particularly busy. And what we've called upon really for the 100 days of the new administration is really to build upon the relief that was provided by the COVID-19 recovery bill and extend and expand more support, more relief for small businesses, in particular those that are, protecting workers and investing in the public health. We are seeking to enact stimulus measures to safely restore travel, meetings, and events by establishing a tax credit for leisure and business travel and providing up to $10 billion in domestic travel promotion grants to encourage Americans to reconnect with their family, friends, and fellow citizens when they are able to do so. We also want to ensure that health and safety measures allow for a predictable nationwide framework by establishing a uniform set of health and safety guidelines for state and local governments to follow domestically, implementing testing as an additional layer of safety, but not a requirement, and importantly, as a mechanism to avoid quarantines, accelerate vaccine distribution, and provide liability protection. We also believe that we should continue to work to safely reopen international travel through a science-driven, risk-based approach to COVID-19 testing. We also think that it's time to look at lifting the travel restrictions included in 212F, which obviously, as of this morning, the Biden team has reaffirmed their focus on keeping the restrictions with the EU, the UK, and Brazil in place as a result of the new South African and UK variants of the vaccine. of COVID-19. And so we will be continuing to work closely to see how we can help, again, to reopen those international borders. We're also calling on the Congress and the administration to create a new Assistant Secretary for Travel and Tourism at the U.S. Department of Commerce. And this Assistant Secretary would be tasked with implementing policies to facilitate international travel, exports, and achieve a national goal of welcoming 116 million international visitors by 2028. And then finally, in the first 100 days, we really want to prioritize the investment in the future of travel mobility and infrastructure. And so, knowing that this is a priority of President Biden and the new administration, we are calling for historic federal investments in all modes of travel infrastructure, including airports, highways, passenger rail, and public transit, and will target investments towards projects that actually improve national and regional mobility and facilitate greater travel and tourism. A quick look here on where we are. Obviously, the last week we've seen significant number of executive orders common in the beginning of an administration. In particular, these have, though, an impact on the travel industry. So one, we support the CDC's inbound testing requirement that will take effect tomorrow. We do think that will be key to reopening international travel, and it adds another important layer of safety. And this executive order would allow for flexibility on a global scale if needed. There's also strong support that we have as an industry. The president's mask mandate for interstate travel is in line with our guidance that we put out back in May, really calling for that phased and layered approach to health and safety. So we've been pushing the wearing of masks very aggressively and think that this is will make it easier for the industry to help to implement the mask mandate. There was also a repeal of the travel ban for certain Muslim majority countries. We think that's the right move. And we're also hopeful that ultimately paves the way to ease the other travel restrictions I mentioned before, including those with the UK, EU, and the Brazil. Again, that's not in a current plan to do this week, and they've now are adding South Africa to the restricted list effective on this coming Saturday. But again, that's around the new variant, and we're hopeful that once there is some vaccine efficacy determined, that we can look to lift these restrictions. And we still have some unanswered questions around some of the EOs, in particular around the mandatory quarantine requirements for international travelers. That's obviously going to be hard to enforce and we think a bit impractical in light of the required testing. So, you know, we were also glad to see the Governor Cuomo's development on quarantine related to testing. We think there's more work to do here as well with an effective testing protocol. And we do look very forward to working with the Biden administration to help develop realistic and effective risk-based policies. And that's really what we're doing. We're preparing a letter that we'll be sharing with the administration that raises some of the concerns and some of the questions that need to be clarified so that we can look to a healthy and safe reopening in the shorter term. So now I'll just touch really quickly on what's next beyond what's happening right now. Despite all of our tremendous legislative wins and the progress so far, it's very clear that our industry is not out of the woods yet. And so we will continue to advocate for additional relief, for the additional stimulus measures that I mentioned before. And we also need to continue to look on how to continue to elevate our industry. This Wednesday, our U.S. Travel President and CEO, Roger Dow, will deliver the State of the American Travel Industry Address. This will cover how we are marching our industry towards new heights, guided by our new Power of Travel policy platform, and encourage you to tune in to live stream. It's free for all. More information, but that's on this coming Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So in closing, you know, travel really, as you all know, as you discussed here, you know, we believe that travel can be a unifying force to help heal a hurting country. And we think that 2021 really will be the most important year for travel yet. So thanks again for having me here, and thanks for all that you do. I'll also note really quickly that tomorrow is National Plan for Vacation Day. And we think that, you know, planning for a vacation that we can have in the future when it's safe to do so is something that can really help to lift folks' spirits and create some excitement. So just be aware that we'll be talking a lot about that tomorrow as well. So thanks for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Tori, and we look forward to having New York State be a big part of National Plan for Vacation Day. So lots of places to book now. We look forward to welcoming you. Any questions from the TAC for Tori?
Hey, Christine, this is Ross. But before the questions, I actually just want to extend thanks to Tori and her team and Roger. They've been incredible partners and incredible advocates for our industry in Washington. They've done an amazing job of keeping us up to date in real time on what's happening, presenting easy to implement opportunities to be part of that advocacy. That's allowed us to make sure our industry is well informed, and they just represent us really well. This is obviously an incredibly busy time for them with the change of administration. So the fact that Tori could spend time with us today to bring us up to speed, I just really wanted to express our appreciation.
Thank you, Ross. I'm glad that you did mention that, because having worked with Roger for many years, it is indeed a blessing that we have leadership that we do in Washington. Regardless of the administration, they have really kept everything the steady course moving forward and representing the United States with dignity. And we're so proud to be part of the organization for U.S. travel. So I'm glad you mentioned it. And Tori, thank you for all you do. And please thank Roger and the entire team. And I will open it up for questions if anyone has.
And I'll just say thank you very much. And your partnership there in New York is absolutely critical to the work that we do. So thank you both so much for everything. It truly is a partnership.
All right, well, now I will move to new business. If any members have any new business, please just remember to state your full name before speaking. Any new business?
Yes, Christine, this is Dan Fuller. Maybe a question for Ross. Ross, you are obviously aware that, through the ski areas and for the winter that our capacity is reduced, but it seems like the demand is there. And many of the things that the industry's been doing has been trying to promote the changes in our operations, kind of know as you go. And I just was wondering, was there any way that I Love New York or so forth could help us promote those changes, whether it's, make reservations to avoid disappointment, or you must wear a mask at all times, or boot up in your car, or any of those other elements?
Yes, thank you, Dan. We've been in very close contact with Scott Brandy, who you know well from New York ski areas of New York. And he's been terrific in making sure we were aware of those sort of new practices for the industry. And I've been working with our digital team, our PR team, to make sure they're aware, and that we've used all kinds of opportunities. I Love New York social media, it's on our website, we've done blogs, letting folks know that your ski experience this year will be terrific here in New York, but would likely be very different, and exactly the things that you're talking about. Whenever we mention skiing, we tell folks, you may need a reservation. This may not be just a show up situation. So we're trying to use all our platforms to amplify that message. We'll continue to do so. We're going to have another call with Scott actually this week. And so we're working to stay as up to date as we can on any developments, and then promoting that out to the world.
Well, thank you, Ross. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank you all for your time. And as a reminder, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 22nd at 11 o'clock a.m. And at this time, we anticipate that will still be a virtual meeting, but we'll advise if that changes. In the meantime, everyone, please stay healthy and safe. And I do need a motion to adjourn. Just unmute when you adjourn, when you give the motion, please.
So moved, Dan Fuller.
Very good. And I need a second, please.
Second, Alana Petroselli.
Thank you, Alana. So the meeting is adjourned, and at 12:17. Thank you all, and we will see you in the spring. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.